that song, that piece, is that this month we are talking about spiritual mind treatment. And one of the things for today, starting us, launching us on that, is how to do it. But rather than taking us through a kind of nuts and bolts of the steps of treatment, I wanted to step into, look at two distinct areas. The one area I wanted us to look at is the notion of faith. And how is it that we build our faith? And then the other area that I wanted us to look at is, what is it that we do to prepare ourselves for actually what it is that we want out of a treatment? Because sometimes, and again, I won't speak for any of you, but I know that sometimes I put the cart so far ahead of the horse that the cart has raced away and the horse is still just kind of figuring out, what is it? Where is it that you want this thing to be going? So I thought, for my own edification, that I would review for myself how it is that I can start to let the horse pull the cart rather than the other way around. And if this is not of use to any of you, I will understand if you get up and leave.
So would not be so rude.
So I just wanted to, though, give you that map about where and what we were going to do in terms of looking at that, how to do the spiritual mind treatment. So in terms of faith, how do we generate that? And what I would say is that, for me, the way that I generate faith is I just look at what it is that I fundamentally believe in. Because there's things that I am already holding on to with such a firm grip that clearly is simply faith. Yesterday I was watching for part of it, 1492, The Conquest of Paradise. And it's a Scott Ridley film looking at Columbus and looking at the plundering of the New World. And in one of the opening scenes, Christopher Columbus is sitting with his younger son, and he's having him look at a boat go out. And they're seeing the boat disappear, and he tells his son, close your eyes. And he said, don't cheat, I'll be seeing you if you cheat. And the son closes his eyes, and when he opens it, the ship has disappeared. He's watched it gradually, get smaller and smaller and smaller until it's invisible. Now, all the while that they are sitting together, Christopher Columbus is peeling an orange. And he explains to his son the reason is that it's like going around the thing. And when he goes back in another scene after this scene with his son, he goes to the monk, and the monk is like, you can't say that. You can't tell them when you're trying to go on your expedition, you cannot tell them that the world is round. Because they are not ready to hear that. You will be burned as a heretic. And then in the film, they very conveniently show the process of burning heretics. So you know that this was not just an idle threat. You know that this was a real thing. I say this, I give this little story from this film, though, because Christopher Columbus believed. He didn't have the launch in space that could show that little blue sphere. We've all seen that little blue sphere. But can you imagine what it took to go from believing that, we step out, this is flat. How is is it that we can believe, based on our experiences, that the world is round? It was a big deal to come up with something like that. And yet, he believed it. He came to believe it. Now, before he launched on the ship, he said, "Father, please forgive me my sins. I've lied to everybody. I've told folks that this is probably going to take about 2-3 weeks. It's going to be a lot longer. It's going to be a whole lot longer. But I wouldn't be able to convince anybody to come with me if they had any idea how long it would be." So I believe he left on August 4th and he arrived October 12th.
Dominican Republic, you mean?
Yeah.
In this hemisphere?
Yeah. So when that happened, and it was a whole lot longer than 2 to 3 weeks. And it was a whole lot further than he said, hey, it might be about 750 miles. It was not. It was longer. Again, I give this illustration because he believed. And sometimes to bring other people along with your belief, you can't tell them the whole truth. I mean, have any of you ever found that if you gave everybody all the information that you had at the time, it was not going to be leading you to have people follow you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes you have to be judicious. I mean, that's a lot of times what we will talk about when we are making claims. If you're making a claim that you are going to be prosperous and have more money than you could possibly need, and you announce this, from a get up downtown Seattle and announce this from the city hall that you are going to be more prosperous than anybody, you are likely to have people that will not necessarily believe you.
Yeah.
So, one of the features about belief is sometimes it's something that we hold tightly and closely to ourselves. What are the kinds of beliefs that we just absolutely hold on to? And I'm not necessarily expecting that you will know it today, this morning, but it's the kind of thing to be engaging in as a spiritual practice over this next week, while we explore this month of treatment. What are the things that I fundamentally believe? Because those fundamental, foundational beliefs are where we can draw additional faith. I mean, I'm going to declare that one of the things that I believe about what I can do as a school psychologist is that I believe that I can have students have a different experience. That based on my working with them, that I will find something, because I'm going to be looking. I'm going to be looking really hard. I will find something that maybe nobody else has seen. And I will be able to share this in a new way that can make the pathway and the future of learning a little bit different. If I didn't believe that, I couldn't do what I do. When I was first learning about school psychology, I really took offense at it. I thought, I am going to be finding disabilities? I don't believe in disabilities. The way I managed and adapted to that notion, I don't even carry them anymore. Anyhow, I would pull out a set of keys and say, do you have a set of keys, Phyllis, with you?
Yes. And right here.
So, with this set of keys, there are certain things that you can do, right? You know, this will probably help you with your car. But the thing is that if you didn't have your keys, you could still get into your car. Someone could get your car started. Someone could drive your car away. Keys are not necessary. But keys make things a whole heck of a lot easier, right?
get it.
Same thing with, same thing with these. These get you into places. The thing about calling it a disability is it gets the student service. I don't have to fundamentally believe that that is the nature of who that kid is, that that disability is the intrinsic characteristic of that child. But I can say that if I call it a disability, it becomes an access. Reba has talked repeatedly about this. It's the notion that by virtue of not having enough monies, you're then available to be getting financial supports. So Reba has understood this for a long time. Now sometimes she gets frustrated at it. She's like, I'd just like to have the money and not to be able to have this abundance coming through these other means. But Reba has also found the trick that sometimes our abundance does not come in ways that we typically look for it to come. So for me, that notion of a disability, when I could believe that I could use it as a key to get the services that that child is entitled to, it has a very different flavor. It stops being about the student and something being inherently or intrinsically wrong with the student. The disability becomes a social construct through which society steps up and has to take responsibility. That it is society's responsibility to teach every student, and it is society's responsibility to figure out what is it that each and every student needs. So again, this is my belief. I don't know that the school district says, it's our fundamental duty to do this. I don't know that it's always as explicitly stated. So sometimes our beliefs may run parallel to other people's beliefs, but they may not be the same beliefs. And again, my suspicion is that when you encounter other people's beliefs, you may say that they run along side by side. Sometimes they might intersect. Sometimes there are places where they cross over. Sometimes where their beliefs have you scratching your head and wondering, how do they believe that? How can they possibly believe that? You all know that I have things where I am fundamentally scratching my head wondering, how is it that anybody can believe that? After the school shootings and children are dead and faculty are dead and NRA folk are saying, this is a fundamental, those are all actors. Those are all actors saying this. Guns are good. If ever more students had guns, there'd be less students dead. If we armed every teacher, every educator, then we would have had lots of guns on that person, and that would be taken care of. They're coming from a belief that it's a different belief than what I can possibly hold. I can't get that belief, and they can't get my belief. They're believing that my belief is about impinging on their rights. And I would say, yeah, my belief is impinging on their rights to the extent that their rights impinge upon the life of other people. So, where are our beliefs? When we can explore our beliefs and the strengths and the power of those beliefs, we then have some access to our faith. A lot of times our beliefs operate unconsciously. Or does everybody think they've got every belief and they know exactly where it comes from? I'm seeing a couple of heads shaking. I think it's very easy for us to pick these things up. And I know that depending on when and how and where, we can pick certain beliefs up without critical analysis of the access or the value of that belief. I think a set of beliefs that has become particularly relevant and powerful is what's happened with the Me Too movement. There was a belief that women were the objects of male usage. And that women's existence was merely for the advancement of male pleasure. And I would say that there is a fair to large continued adherence to that notion. That notion of women as secondary. One of the things that I think happens with those beliefs when they aren't critically adopted is that there isn't really an opportunity, or there really isn't an accessibility to look at it and ask the questions. Do I fundamentally see women as equal to? Another movement is the notion Black Lives Matter. I think I've talked about this before, and you might be sick of my saying it, but Black Lives Matter can come up, and then someone will invariably say, but all lives matter. And the issue that speaks to is that when people hear Black Lives Matter, the implicit belief that they have is, my life doesn't matter because I'm not black. Their take on that is that only Black Lives Matter. Whereas I think the movement of Black Lives Matter has really been about, damn it, Black Lives Matter too. When we could be in a society where black adolescent or mid-20 male or female gets shot or beaten or harmed at the hands of our police. And the orientation is, well, they were just doing what they needed to do. There's this huge, weird belief in that it's going to require that level of lethal response to a child with a toy gun. Well, it could have been a real gun. Yeah, it could have been a real gun. But that doesn't mean you have to shoot them in the head 16 times. You know, you don't hear any stories about a white dude getting shot in the head 16 times. You just don't hear it. And it's something that I think would make news. I don't think a white dude getting hit in the head 16 times would go without remark. Or go without a major lawsuit against the police station. Why did they need to go after him? You know, and then there's this whole turning around on the victim. Well, maybe he deserved it. Maybe he was doing something that, why did he have... And again, I give this background because these are illustrations about beliefs that are operating. These are illustrations about ways of thinking and fundamentally holding the world. So when we're willing to look at our own beliefs, so clearly from what I'm saying is I hold a fundamental belief that all lives matter. But in order to get to that place, I adhere to the movement Black Lives Matter. When the Pledge of Allegiance and the national anthem came up at the National Education Association conference, I got down on both knees and I knelt. Because I believed in the work that others are doing. And I wanted to support that. People looked at me and like, what are you doing? So what are our beliefs? And it's easy to look at our beliefs. It's very, 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 very easy. Why is it so easy? What makes it easy? what do we get passionate about?
Things we believe in.
What is it that can launch us into a discussion?
Oh,
What is it that can have us just be ready to talk? So what is it?
The things that we don't like.
So the things that we don't like can cue us in on what our beliefs are. Where it is that we're passionate. Charlie came in this morning talking about that, taking that bath of nature. But that's also a clear belief. It is the belief that there is something healing about just being in a woods, being in the quiet, going to the ocean, the sound of the waves. There's a belief that this world that we live on is a means through which goodness and beauty, through which life and vitality, through which abundance is really manifest. Anyone ever go to an artistic show? Anyone ever feel something differently after going to that show? I mean, Phyllis has a particular insight into this because she had a daughter on Broadway. That kind of beauty taps into that place of belief. So our beliefs can be, we can explore them, we can examine them, we can come into an awareness of them. And again, I say all of this because a fundamental, foundational feature for giving a treatment is our faith, our belief. And the way to build up our beliefs is to find out where we already have beliefs. I remember talking with somebody and it's like, I just don't believe in God. Well, they feel very strongly about not believing in God. That is a foundational belief. That is their foundational belief. We always believe in something. So the spiritual path, the spiritual invitation, is just to explore where our beliefs are at play. Now I know you have homework last week because you were going to be doing gratitudes in your journals from Stephanie. And you weren't here last week, so now you know that was Stephanie's homework. So to be able to write about 10 things each day that you're grateful for. Not too hard, right? Yeah, you can handle that. So you can add to the bottom of your 10 list is what's a belief you became aware of today? And it might be the same belief every day. I don't care. You know, the homework assignment isn't about, this is not about a checkup on your creativity. You need to turn it in and I need to see 400 different things of belief. This is really just a way for us to play with the notion. The way we build our faith is to see where we already have it. A certain person in the room said that they didn't really have an experience of love. And my experience of this person was one of the deepest, most profound, powerful love. That this person had just this heart, this depth of holding a space where transformation could happen. A space where people could be raised up into something entirely new. And that only happens in an absolute field of unconditional love. So even when we may not be aware of how it is that we are in the world and how it is that certain attributes and qualities of the divine are at work, I'm giving you a hint that our consciousness of it is not the only thing that's going on. That we may be vehicles of wisdom and power and beauty and truth and wholeness and life and vitality, and we may never be able to see it when we look in the mirror. We may not have that just automatic sense of looking up and saying, I'm looking at wisdom today. I like how wisdom is looking back at me. we may be thinking, I don't know what is wrong with you. Now, I use this as kind of the branch to that other step of treatment. It's like, okay, what are we actually going to treat for? Sometimes the way we find out what it is to treat for is, where is it that we are feeling at a loss? Where is it that it feels like something is missing? Now, a lot of times this doesn't take a whole lot of like soul searching. A lot of us can kind of get up and there's like, we can have a little list of what the wrong things are. There's this, and there's this, and there's this, and there's this. You know, we could probably have a much easier time of coming up with that list than the gratitude list. You know.
The little black hole.
A little black hole of inadequacies. What are the inadequacies that I'm conscious of today? What are the inadequacies that I am going to? Well, but I'm just saying that many of us, and I am discounting the fact that I might be in the presence of bodhisattvas who have this completely managed and taken care of. And if that's the case, thank you for being here, so that your bodhisattva presence can be shining and radiating on all the rest of us. But for the bodhisattva seeking perspective that I'm in, to be able to look at what are the things that just don't feel complete. What are the things where we have a sense of longing? That one shouldn't be too hard to do. And the whole point of that is just to realize that we have the power, when we have consciousness of that, to take those beliefs, to take that place of faith that we come from and say, do I want that to stay or do I want that to go? Do I want to keep building that up? So again, to go back to that movie, Columbus, he went to the board and he was telling them why his trip was important. And these men of faith were like, no, we're not really interested in your ideas. Columbus really wanted to go. He really felt like he could do it. You know, at one point, I'm trying to remember if this was the scene. At one point, they said, why should we believe that you, this little navigator person, why should we believe that you, this Italian navigator in Spain, you're not even from here, why should we believe in you when people as wise as Aristotle say something like this? And in the movie, Columbus said, well, if I remember my teachings correctly, Jesus was the son of a carpenter, And he said that he was more than that. And that, let me just say, that did not lead them to say, oh, that's a thought. You know, they were like, oh my gosh, you were blind. So are you saying you're Jesus? No, I'm not saying I'm Jesus. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm just saying you believe in someone that came from that kind of background, was able to become who he was. I believe that I have something that can give glory to the divine. I believe that I have something that can give glory to the divine. His critics were not like, woo, you did it. He got turned down. And in fact, when he went back to the monastery where he was hanging out, he was just really, well, how would I say? He was just so pissed off. And he was, you know, he lit into the monks at the monastery. You know, he was saying, you said that God would do things and God didn't show up at all. And let me just say, the monks were not quiet and silent and dispassionate. And there was a fist fight, a brawl. And at the one point, he had to do penance. And his penance was he was supposed to stay silent. Boom. Columbus was supposed to stay silent. And he was supposed to stay silent on the ground. And he was supposed to lay silent on the ground, face down on the ground. And his two sons came upon him, and the one son was a cleric, and one son was, well, that's what happens when you do that. And the younger son was like, isn't there anything that I can do? Isn't there anything that we can do for him? Because no, this is his penance. But the younger son then laid down on the ground next to him. Just laid with him. Now, I don't know how much of this is actual. I don't know how much of this is for dramatic effect. But I just tell this story because I think it's easy for us to find where it is we would like change. That desire for change is something that we can mix with our faith to lead to a powerful outcome of treatment. But the first step is to find out, you know, what's our faith? And then the second step, what is it that we want to change? What would I want instead? So what do I want to change and what do I want instead? What do I want it to change to? Columbus knew he wanted it to change from a no, you can't go, no, you can't try to prove what it is you know, to a yes, you can go. I mean, in some ways, the way that the movie was done made me think that the person was someone that was an adherent of science and mind principles. Because, you know, many of the ways that Columbus, the character, spoke in the film were very much like this. At the time in the film when he gets his audience with Queen Isabella, you know, he makes a connection with her. At one point he refers to her as, well, you're a woman, and so there are things that have been held back to you. Or as a queen, you've had it all. And she goes, well, you don't know of what I have. And then he goes, and then he says, you're a woman, so maybe there aren't as many things available to you. And again, I'm not saying that the historicity of this is accurate, but his attention to where she found herself constrained made a connection. So he said, you know, I've never met a queen before. And she says to him, well, that puts us in good company because I've never met a navigator before. So, what is it What is it that's going on? And what would we want instead? The wonderful thing about this teaching is this isn't about a map. I've got to do these 50 things to get there. The question is, are we willing to go there? Are we really willing to go to that different place? So just again, in summary, the 3 things to be thinking about are, what is it we believe? Because we've already got a whole lot of life energy taken up with our beliefs. We already have so much faith that we have access to, that we just take for granted day by day by day, minute by minute by minute. I mean, I did not bring an umbrella today. I did not bring my raincoat. I have a powerful faith that I will go outside and I will not get wet from the rain. Some of these things are easy beliefs, but we generate these kinds of beliefs all the time. What is it that we believe? How can I pay attention to that and let that fuel my sense of faith? What is it that I don't like? That one should be pretty easy. Or maybe, again, I'm projecting onto you. It's really easy for me. You all might have the perfect bodhisattva's lives, and you're just here so that others can have greater light too. And then, am I willing to go to a different place? Am I willing to go to a different place? Because ultimately, treatment is about that different place. And so it is. Oh, yeah, actually, yes. I have an affirmation for us.
Ready?
Ta-da. So please join me in saying this. We're going to go through it 3 times. So I'll read it once, and then you all read it with me 3 more times. My words and actions directly reflect my faith. With every prayer, I embody an even greater sense of my own divinity. So 1, my words and actions directly reflect my faith. With every prayer, I embody an even greater sense of my own divinity. 1. My words and actions directly reflect my faith. With every prayer, I embody an even greater sense of my own divinity. And last time, my words and actions directly reflect my faith. With every prayer, I embody an even greater sense of my own divinity. And so it is.